Hello dear students, this video will explain to you about the horizontal section of the brain to study about the internal capsule. We can also learn about the parts of the corpus callosum, parts of the lateral ventricle, the caudate nucleus, lentiform nucleus and thalamus, which is seen at the same section. The internal capsule horizontal section, here you can see that it is the right half, right half of the brain shown here. You need to identify which is anterior and which is posterior. So this is anterior. If you look from the external surface, this will be the close to the frontal pole, and you also have the temporal pole, you can see from the side, and then the occipital pole. So this is posterior and this will be anterior. Now, where is the internal capsule? So I will try to draw it for you. So let us differentiate the internal capsule. This is the internal capsule, and what I'm drawing is the anterior limb. When it takes a bend, it's called as genu, and this is the posterior limb of internal capsule. So you need to first identify this, how to draw this internal capsule, which is the anterior limb. This is the anterior limb, okay, of the internal capsule, and this bend is called as genu, and this is the posterior limb. Okay, after you have understood where are the limbs or parts of the internal capsule, the anterior limb separates caudate nucleus medially. So this is caudate. Okay, here you can see the head of caudate, it is mentioned, head of caudate nucleus. It separates caudate nucleus medially, and laterally the lentiform nucleus. Laterally it is the lentiform nucleus. The posterior limb separates thalamus medially. This what you're seeing is parts of thalamus, and laterally it is the lentiform nucleus. Okay, so after knowing where is caudate nucleus, where is thalamus, let us see details about lentiform nucleus. Now lentiform nucleus has two parts. Lentiform, like lens, okay, it has two parts. The inner one is called as globus pallidus. This is called as globus pallidus, and the lateral one is called as putamen. This one is called as putamen. So the lentiform nucleus is made up of globus pallidus medially and laterally putamen. Now the lentiform is covered medially by the internal capsule, externally by the external capsule. Okay, so I'll show you where is the external capsule. Can you see? You can see that here, just outside, you can see there is a white color substance you're seeing. That is the external capsule here. Okay, now outer to the external capsule you can see a gray matter. The name of that gray matter will be claustrum. Okay, so the name of this outside one is called claustrum. Here, can you see this gray matter here? That is called as claustrum. Okay, now external to claustrum there is another capsule that will be called as extreme capsule, the one in white again, that is called as extreme capsule. Okay, so let me just complete. The lentiform nucleus medially is covered by internal capsule, then laterally it's covered by external capsule. External to external capsule is the claustrum. It is the claustrum, and external to the claustrum will be the external extreme capsule. Okay, it will be the extreme capsule. Okay, fine. Now the lateral most, what structure you're seeing here, this is called as insula. Insula is also known as the hidden cortex. Hidden cortex. If you retract the lateral sulcus, you will usually see insula. Okay. Now, what are the other parts which are visible? We can see parts of corpus callosum. So, corpus callosum has genu, that is seen here. This is the genu of corpus callosum, right? And you can see the fibers of forceps minor passing through the genu, forceps minor. So these are fibers which will transmit information from one hemisphere to the other hemisphere, okay, from the frontal pole of the right side to the left side, okay. So that is forceps minor. So it will pass like this through the genu. Posteriorly, we have splenium. We have splenium of corpus callosum, that's here. And through this passes the forceps major. So here you have fibers passing from the occipital lobe. Okay, this is how it passes, and it's more deeper. That's why it's called forceps major. Next, we can see the separation between the two lateral ventricles is called as septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum is marked here. Then you can see fornix over here. Now coming to the parts of lateral ventricle. The lateral ventricle has 3 horns. Lateral ventricle is present in the cerebral cortex and it has 3 horns. The anterior horn is inside the frontal lobe, okay. Anterior horn is in the frontal lobe. So what you're seeing here, this is the anterior horn here, right? Then we have just below the fornix, this part, this is the foramen of Monro, okay. Between the thalamus, this is for third ventricle. This place is for the third ventricle. Then the posterior horn can be seen here, which is entering into the occipital lobe, posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So let me complete the parts of the lateral ventricle. It has anterior horn in the frontal lobe, posterior horn in the occipital lobe. Then there is an inferior horn in the temporal lobe. So you need to go more, the section should be more deep. Then the body of the lateral ventricle in the parietal lobe. So these are the parts of the lateral ventricle. So we will look at them in the next upcoming slide. So in here we have seen the anterior limb of the internal capsule, genu, posterior limb. Then we saw the lentiform nucleus with the coverings and its parts, that is globus pallidus and putamen. Okay, then we continue to see the parts of the lateral ventricle and parts of corpus callosum. Okay, right now we can see this section is available in the lab. So here again, this is related to the left side. So now we need to first identify, first draw the internal capsule. Okay, so let's just draw it. It will be here. This is the anterior limb, this will be genu, and this is the posterior limb. Okay, so this is genu, right? Anterior limb, genu, and posterior limb. So what are the parts shown here? We can see this will be the head of caudate nucleus over here. Okay. Then we have globus pallidus medially, okay, and we have putamen laterally, Then external to lentiform nucleus, we said it is the external capsule. This is external capsule. Okay, external capsule. Okay, and then the gray color matter here, this will be the claustrum. Okay, claustrum, it's a part of the basal ganglia, and external to that is the extreme capsule here, extreme capsule. Then this part will be the insula, hidden cortex. Okay, okay, the posterior limb of the internal capsule separates thalamus medially. So here you can see all these are parts of thalamus, the various nuclei for the thalamus. Okay, now we can also see some part of the this is the anterior horn for the lateral ventricle, anterior horn for the lateral ventricle. Okay, this will be forceps minor. Okay, forceps minor. And this part will be the genu. Okay, genu of the corpus callosum. Okay, so these are the parts, and here we can see the posterior horn going into the occipital lobe. Okay, this plastinated specimen is very interesting on the left side. So here we can see the anterior horn. This is the anterior horn going towards the frontal lobe. Okay, anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and here pointing inside, this will be the posterior horn. Okay, posterior horn. Okay, going towards the occipital lobe. Okay, posterior horn here. And on the left half, they've also you can see that it is also going deep here inside. This is the inferior horn, inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So all the three horns are very clear in this plastinated specimen. You can also notice that there is some structure present inside the lateral ventricle. This will be called as choroid plexus, which is responsible for the production of cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, here we can see the parts of thalamus. You have anterior thalamic nuclei. Okay, there is a Y-shaped structure here. It is separating the different parts of the thalamus. Then you have ventral anterior nucleus here, ventral lateral nucleus, the ventral posterior lateral nucleus, VPLN. Here the two swellings are lateral geniculate body, and then you have medial geniculate body. Medially you have ventral posterior medial nucleus, VPMN. Okay, so anterior thalamic nuclei, ventral anterior, ventral lateral nucleus. Then the posterior has ventral posterior lateral and ventral posterior medial. So I hope it was clear to see the section of the internal capsule and parts of the thalamus. Thank you.